Okay, we are now live, and thank you for joining me. Welcome in, everyone. Today we have Anthony Aguilar in the building, and I'm very honored to have a conversation with him. As you know, Anthony is a former combat veteran, a former Green Beret, the Gaza whistleblower, as we all know, and now a Green Party candidate running for Congress out of North Carolina. What you may not know is that Anthony actually graduated at West Point, top of his class, flying colors, and not only that, but he took a year-long course, as I understand it, on Clauswitz and his seminal work on war. So who better to make sense of this war that we're seeing right now with Iran than someone who is a scholar of military theory and history and its application? Thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me on. It's always great to have conversations with you. I think you have you have a great audience and fan base, and I think that there's always great conversations. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Well, you know, every time I listen to these podcasts where they have military analysts, political analysts, we always hear about Clausewitz. They're always name dropping Clausewitz. So I was like, you know what? It's time. It's the season of war. It's time to get knowledgeable. And man, it is a dense book. But you know, it was. I guess my first question about it is that Clausewitz's On War was published in 1832. Posthumously as well, as it was unfinished at the time of his death. And the way that wars were fought in the early 1800s are vastly different than the wars fought in the early 2000s in 2026 up to this very day. So my first question is, why, after nearly 200 years, is Clausewitz still relevant?
Well, you know, I would ask myself the same question when I was a freshman at West Point, and you know, we actually studied Clausewitz and other war theorists, Jomini, Sun Tzu, others throughout my whole 4 years. But as a senior, you kind of do a whole year focused on it's a class called War and its Theorists, which is really heavy in Clausewitz. And I asked myself that same question. You know, we're on the post Desert Storm, Desert Shield, a tank battle. We're using special operations more so. If you look at things that happened in Panama, Grenada, at this time, you know, when I first joined, we were not at war in the global war on terror. So it made it interesting to, you know, why are we studying these you know, old philosophers, these old theorists, when we're facing modern crises or modern challenge? And
they used to just like line up in a you know, and just fire their muskets and then one line. I mean, we all saw the Patriot with Mel Gibson. We know how it worked, right?
Yeah. So when you consider, you know, when Clausewitz lived, his time or his experience base that he then wrote his 8 books that then became On War. He had written other works, but you know, he has the perspective of the winning side, because, you know, after our revolution, you had the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, and ultimately Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo. But he was on the side of defeat by Napoleon in the Prussian army. He was a young officer, but then ultimately he was on the winning side as a Prussian officer. So he wrote his perspectives from the winning side, so to speak. And I think it's really interesting to where, you know, when you see a lot of folks online in leadership or in other type of, you know, they quote a lot of Sun Tzu, right? Like Sun Tzu says, you know, like, never underestimate your enemy, or know your enemy and know thyself. These pithy quotes that are real easy to grasp. And that's great. You know, Sun Tzu was also a war theorist in a different time, in a different type of war. But if you look at specifically On War, why it stands the test of time is not necessarily the tactics or the battle itself, but why nations fight wars. So, you know, if you look at the pre-Westphalian treaty, before the existence of what we now know as nation states or countries, wars were fought a lot different. You had feudal lords, you had knights, you were fighting over primarily over title or land. You have the Treaty of Westphalia, nation states emerge, nations start fighting for empire and nation state status. And so he writes on what I think is the most important part of all of what Clausewitz has written, and the most important thing to take away is what he calls the trinity, right?
Yes. Okay.
Which is the balance between the government, the people, and the military. And when you look at a country like the United States, that's very applicable. And if you look at this war going on right now with Iran going into its 71st day, I think we see a lot of takeaways and context that if more folks understood and appreciated Clausewitz, could look at this in a way that brings understanding. Because we have some people that when it comes to this war with Iran, they're like, yep, it's great. We'll do whatever the president says, and don't care if the price of gas goes up. It's worth it. And then you have some people who are entirely against every aspect of it. And then you have a lot of folks in the middle that are just trying to figure out why we're fighting this war. So yeah, I think that when you break out Clausewitz and you start to look at the trinity, but then grand strategy, the three levels of war: strategy, operational, and the tactical, it starts making a lot more sense in terms of what you hear on the news every day.
Is it safe to say, or correct to say, that Clausewitz's purpose for writing this was to sort of discredit earlier theoreticians who dealt with war on a theoretical level, like almost like it's a science, and didn't really consider the art of war? And the fact that, in theory, war is like all out, unremittent violence all the time until one enemy is defeated and the other one is still standing. But really, I think what you're saying is that what Clausewitz's addition to the scholarly work on war was that there's actually a lot of social, political, cultural logistics that constrain the war from happening, just proceeding, full on total war, basically. Does that make sense?
Yes. And, Clausewitz does define and discuss total war, but he also discusses limited war. He discusses unlimited warfare, which is different than total war in the aspect of how it's fought. But to your point, that's exactly what his intent was to, in a way, call out, but then to also build upon other theorists. There was another theorist of the time, Henri Jomini, who wrote a book, The Art of War, not Sun Tzu's Art of War, but the European writer Jomini, who was French. So he wrote on war much from the losing side, in terms of how to fight a war when you lose, or what happens when you lose a war. Whereas Clausewitz, as a senior Prussian officer, wrote in the aspect of when you win a war, what were all the things that led to victory? What did the enemy do wrong? What did your side do wrong? But I think that ultimately, when you look at what Clausewitz brings to the table for understanding, is why when you hear a lot of pundits and military analysts talking about it at such the high level of war, is that Clausewitz really gives us understanding of why we should even fight wars. What's the purpose? What should we expect out of a war? Do we go to war over anything? Do we go to war over everything? Do we go all in, all out in every war that we fight? What are the objectives? Are the objectives limited or total? And I think when you start to piece through those books, the offense, the defense, the attack, the strategy, war plans, you really start to see that this war with Iran, especially, is a real shit show.
It's a good way of putting it. I have to admit, before we get to Iran, I found the book a bit difficult, a bit dense to read. And I don't think that's just simply because it was written 200 years ago and translated into English subsequently. I think it also had to do with a lot of the abstract language that he used, which you know, paradoxically makes it more relevant because he's dealing with abstractions.
Yes.
But you know, you know, when I'm reading, I like concrete examples.
Yes.
So I kind of wanted more of those, but he seems to reference like over and over Napoleon and Frederick the Great. Those two in his mind seems to be the pinnacle of military genius. What would you consider that Clauswitz would say would make them special? Like why was Napoleon and Frederick the Great so special? What gave them an edge on the battlefield? Why do we remember them in history?
Well, there's a there's a French term that was often associated to Napoleon that is used in on war, but it's a term that's it's called a Clausewitz, or the gift, and it's what he described as this intellectual gift that leaders like Frederick the Great or Napoleon had in their ability to envision the conflict or envision the battlefield, envision the war, envision the second and third steps prior to and after to, the use of artillery, the use of maneuver. You know, if you think about how the U.S. fought its revolution, it was very much in the Prussian style of warfare, lining up, you know, shooting in a straight row, reloading. Your buddy in front of you gets shot, you step into his place, you shoot. You know, the red coats and then when the United States, when the militias and the patriots started to adapt the Native American way of warfare, the ambush, the hiding, the hit and retreat, we were very successful. And what we then adopted into the American military after the wars of the Napoleonic campaign and ultimate Prussian victory was the Prussian model. Today in the United States military, even today, the Prussian model of our staffs, of our combatant commands, of our army theaters, of our army corps, of our brigades and divisions, or divisions and brigades, are all established in that same way. That way that Frederick and Napoleon fought warfare is what became known as the Western way of war. Okay. Very different than how wars were fought in Africa, or how wars were fought in Asia or Central Asia or China, in very, very different styles of warfare, and the aspects of maneuver and command. And the reason Clausewitz, my copy here, this is the unabridged version. I've had this for 26 years now. I just realized it's crazy. I've had this thing since my freshman year at West Point. I've had this.
Mine's like only half as big. I feel.
This is the. Do you have On War Envy? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is the unabridged. So the unabridged version actually has some of his essays that kind of give a little bit more context to the theory and to the abstract, which is good. But it's still very. This is not a book you just pick up and peruse. The night before you have a big exam and try to figure out how you're going to write your essay about
which was actually coincidentally what I was doing last night as I was preparing for this stream, because I just a full disclaimer, I'm not going to front to my audience. I did not even finish this completely. Sad to say, I got to about book 5, but I am going to finish it. But I like to reflect a little bit. It's very dense. One of the things I do appreciate about the book is that he talks a lot about the contradictions. And I love analysis that focuses on contradictions and what is more contradictory than a war. But he gives a lot of specific examples of these contradictions. I'm just going to run through just to give our audience a primer, and you don't have to respond to all of these, but just to inform. Yeah. So the most obvious one he talks about is tactics versus strategy, which I think we just kind of touched on. But tactics would be concerned with one battle, or the victory of one battle. Strategy concerns a succession of battles. And then there's theory versus practice. I guess you could also think science versus art there too as well, which can also be classified as analysis versus synthesis. There's a great chapter where he talks about how theory falls short when it comes to the application of war. And theory is good because you can analyze things, but theory does not synthesize the art of war. And I think that's what he was, trying to educate people on. There's also resolution or resolve versus boldness. And the difference I think Clauswitz makes in his book is the one of necessity. It's like resolution and boldness is directly proportional of necessity. And I remember as an example, he says something like, if a young man shows his skill in horsemanship, just to show his skill in horsemanship, he leaps across a deep cleft, then he is bold. But if he does the same thing while being pursued by troops, he's only resolute, which I thought that's an interesting point. But under that pretense, would we consider Donald Trump bold for starting a war against Iran?
So there's the aspect that you can be bold and stupid. But you can also be bold in calculated, and then there's boldness and there's resolve. I think that what we're seeing from Iran is definitely a great deal of resolve or resolute.
Right.
They're standing on they to not capitulate, to not give in, to not crumble underneath the pressure of facing two very advanced militaries. And then in resolve and resolute, there are bold moves. I would say that if you look at Operation Market Garden in World War II, at the time, we had to seize the bridge. We had to get troops across the bridge, or the Germans would continue to supply their lines, and the war would continue. So we were very resolute in not giving up our side of the bridge, but a very calculated, bold risk, where the calculation of what do we gain vice what we don't gain or lose, because not gaining something is different than losing something. So what do we not gain or gain, and what do we lose if this fails? That is the measure of boldness in terms of an action or an operation or a tactic or even a campaign that is tied to deliberate actions that tie to a greater strategy. And I think what I've continued to talk about with this war with Iran from day one, from the 28th of February, is does the United States possess more missiles, more advanced missiles, better jets, a better Navy, better electronic warfare, better special operations, the better military than Iran? Of course. I do not question that. It's a matter of what is the strategy? What is the desired end state? Because if you do not have a very clear and concise and attainable end state that is then tied to strategy, you are wasting the military. You are wasting resources. You are wasting lives, what Clauswitz would call the blood and treasure of a nation.
Yeah. And, everyone that quotes Clausewitz quotes the specific line, war is an extension of politics by other means. Is this just a cliche at this point? I mean, is it really that insightful of a quote? What does it mean? Is he just trying to say that wars are fought for political goals simply enough?
So, it's funny you say that, because I remember, so in my version here, so the same thing. When I studied on war the first time and cracked open Clausewitz with all the pithy quotes, like the smoking jacket in the mahogany room with the pipe, ha ha ha, war is an extension of politics, but just imagine that, right? But on in this version here, Michael Howard, who wrote the original unabridged version that's been popular in the U.S., was my actual instructor. He's a retired Army officer. So at the time, Colonel Michael Howard. So the guy that wrote the book was my instructor. So you couldn't get away with just throwing out some quote and the teacher going, "Ooh, impressive!" Like, so I used that. I was like, "Well, war is an extension." And he's like, "What does that mean?" I was like, "What do you mean? What does it mean?" It means what it means. Like, there's politics, and then war is an extension of it. He's like, "What does that mean?" Like, you're just repeating words. Like, what does it mean? So really looking into it in terms of what Clausewitz really means is that war, the act of war, combat, mortal combat, martial combat, is not something that nations should go into lightly. It's not
Okay.
something that nations should go into without expecting a certain degree of loss, without expecting to lose or to give up something in order to gain the greater good, which is why in fighting a war, the reason we say it's extended to the politics, or what the French word would be realpolitik, right?
Mhm.
Realpolitik would
Mhm.
be the purpose or the why, or what's the reason. And if you look at what his argument was, looking at France, because he was a Prussian, but looking at France, he actually admired Napoleon and his tactics, which is why he wrote about it from the Prussian side. He didn't, he wasn't dogging Napoleon, but
Yeah.
Napoleon ultimately lost. And if you look at how Napoleon ultimately lost, it was not because Napoleon didn't have a better military or better tactics. No one rivaled in the European continent Napoleon in his creation of the Grand Armée, corps, divisions, his maneuver, his use of artillery. No one rivaled it.
Okay.
How he was beat in the end is because he lost the plot. He lost the focus on what was the political objective of going to war. So just imagine, you have country A and country B, and country A and country B live in relative existence to each other. And one country says, "Hey, I want that river that crosses through your territory is important to my country, and I want some of that." And then
Yeah.
you have negotiations, right? You have negotiations, you have treaties. But then when negotiations and treaties ultimately fail, either you have capitulation and you say, okay, well, it's not that important, or the only next step after that is actual war. War to compel the enemy into your will. That's the intent behind the extension of politics. And that's another classic Clauswitz perspective, is that war is a means to impart your will upon another, not just to fight war and to kill people or to take, but to impart your will, and that will should be connected to something political. So it's really interesting to look at this, wars throughout history, especially the wars that I fought in, that I go back and I reflect on and say, okay, why were we in Iraq? What is the why? Like, what was the why? And if I ask myself that and I go through history, well, there's all kinds of competing reasons. Clausewitz would scoff at that and say, you wasted resources. You wasted resources and time and treasure. I
Mhm.
think he would say the same thing about this war with Iran. What is the achievable, attainable end state? What is the realpolitik of this war? What is the intent? What does the United States hope to achieve? And
I
I
mean,
think
I'm trying to answer that. Like, I'm trying to answer that from a logical perspective, and I'm thinking, is it just to turn Iran into a rump state because we're ultimately trying to control the global economy, and China needs the Strait of Hormuz, and we're trying to really damage China because of this? But I don't know. I mean, from Donald Trump, we hear all kinds of excuses and different reasons for doing this war. But
well, this is also I think we've talked about it before, but the concept of national power.
okay.
How do nations flex power? And that also comes out of here from the old German that's been translated, but essentially what Clausewitz talks about, which Jomini and Sun Tzu and others talk about too in different perspectives, is the elements of national power: diplomacy, information, your military, and the economy. And I would say right now, you look at Iran. What has Iran been doing more so than flaunting their missiles or talking about their military capability? What has Iran really been focusing on and putting a lot of energy into? Diplomacy. We saw the foreign minister, Arachi. He went to China and he visited with Xi Jinping before Donald Trump. He went to Russia and visited with Vladimir Putin in person. He went to Pakistan and visited with their foreign minister and defense minister in person. He's doing the rounds diplomatically to shore up support, or to at least shore up not having more resistance. That's diplomatic. Information. We've seen that Iran is doing a lot in the information space to embarrass the administration in the global stage. So those things often matter more so than the actual military aspect, because really, in the end, what can the military achieve? You know, I want to blow up that battleship. Okay, you blew up that battleship. What did that give you? Nothing. I mean, it didn't give us anything that we didn't have before. It didn't change the nature of either nation. So your military, in terms of an actual war, the military is actually the least important part. And I know that's probably counterintuitive to many people, but in war, the military is not the most important aspect.
So what does, if not the military, you saying it's the national power? It's all these other aspects of
National power, alliance building. And I go back to the example of Napoleon. What ultimately defeated Napoleon was his inability to raise the state, to bring in, to raise the Grand Armée like he had in wars previous. He lost the support of the people. He lost the support of the government. And in his case, because he was the emperor, he was the government. But he lost the support of the people, and therefore his army was much weaker. And the Prussians built a coalition, a huge coalition of the English and the Prussian, and the giant army that faced Napoleon in Waterloo was an alliance, a massive alliance. And what the Prussians learned was that if you're going to go up against Napoleon, you have to raise an alliance, because you're not going to beat him alone. And so the Prussians started to sow the seeds of that in that game, so to speak, prior to even that next campaign of the war. Because, you know, Napoleon had been deposed. He was exiled. He came back. He linked back up with his Fifth Armée, his corps that he led personally, raised that army back and went back to war in Europe. And the Prussians learned, well, if you're going to beat Napoleon, you're not going to do it on the battlefield. You win before you even show up. You have to show up with an alliance.
Right.
You have to show up with countries to not only fight him on the ground, but to cut off the rear and cut off his supply lines. And that's where the concept of the fifth column, which special forces gets its lineage and heritage from, derived from. Because, you know, your first through fourth columns are your front lines, your phalanx, and your flanks. The fifth column is those actions that you do behind the enemy lines or in the periphery to distract and draw resources from the enemy. That's what the Prussians learned in fighting Napoleon. And the Prussians prepared for that long before there was ever a shot fired at Napoleon. They had already set the conditions to win the war. Now, you can lose a war with a shitty military, but ultimately the military doesn't necessarily win it for you. Look at Vietnam. Look at Iraq. Look at Afghanistan. The opponent that the United States fought in Vietnam was not the militarily dominant force. It was because of if you look at the Vietnam era, what did the United States start to lose over the years? The will of the people, the backing of the government, and therefore in an army like ours in the United States, you corrode the will of the people. So too do you that of the military.
Could we also add to that Vietnam and, in the case of Iran, they're waging defensive wars, and according to Clauswitz, it's much easier to wage a defensive war with a negative object as opposed to an offensive war with a positive object. Would that be correct?
Great observation. Yeah, well said. Perfect. It's not only is at the tactical level is the defense easier to execute in terms of being a defensive force dug in. Look at the size force that we had to throw at the Germans in Normandy. It was a force array of practically 5 to 1 because they were in the defense. But at the strategic level, to your point, yes, and in the defense against a negative theory or a negative idea, such as I want to take over your country, or I'm going to bomb you into the Stone Age, or I'm going to undo your way of life and your way of governance. Well, as the defensive nation, you then harbor the nationalistic fervor of the people. That is like what Vietnam with the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, what they had, that a U.S. soldier going to Vietnam would would never really truly possess, because an American soldier wasn't defending their home. They weren't defending their neighborhood. They weren't defending their mother or children. They weren't fighting for their land. It wasn't existential. Yeah. I'm not saying that American soldiers that went to fight in Vietnam lacked bravery or glory or didn't know what they were getting into. But when you look at the comparative analysis between the fighter, the war, the army, or the what maybe look like an army, like the Viet Cong, it's when you have national will and you're defending your homeland on your side, you have a great advantage. That's where in that paradigm, in that trinity, you have the people.
It's all, I mean, are you speaking to them? It's because he talks about the moral forces a lot. So
yes.
So that would sort of be, you know, when you're defending your homeland, you know, you have morality on your side, and that's a pretty strong power. With Napoleon, I mean, I'm not a history buff, okay? I don't know too much about the Napoleonic Wars, but he lost at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, and then didn't he lose to Russia in 1812 as well?
So when he tried to go, so you know, at the time the Russians, you had the Prussians of Central Europe, and then you had the Russians. When he tried to take his army, because he had lost, what he wanted to do was he wanted to gain resources. So he was marching to Moscow.
Yeah,
and
he captured Moscow, right?
He did, but he didn't get out, and that's what the Russians said. You might get here, but you'll never get out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've been saying about, you know, when we look at this war right now with Karag Island or Kashem or mainland Iran, we might get in, but we're not getting out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of those things to where you have to take into all the things, you know, logistics, the will of your army, the capability of your army. And that's where you see things at the tactical level, like having winter clothing or not, comes into play. It really sucks when you're fighting through negative 30-degree temperature and 40-foot snow drifts, and you don't even have shoes. So, yeah.
So to add to that, would you agree with this commenter who says it's a myth about the Russian winter because that was a myth created by Napoleon himself? Like, what actually defeated Napoleon in Russia? Was it the Russian winter? Because I've been saying that too.
You know, I would not say that the Russian winter was a myth. The Russian winter is a real thing. Just ask soldiers who fought in Stalingrad or who fought in Kaliningrad. I mean, Russian winter is a real thing. Is it the Russian winter that defeated Napoleon? Not ultimately. It was his overextension of his army, his ego, not listening to his subordinate corps commanders who knew, like, hey, Napoleon, let's go in the defensive for the winter, hold the line, and then renew our offensive in the spring when we can build up magazines, or, you know, the magazine in the French army was, you know, stocks of food along the way. So when you look at all of those factors, was it the Russian winter that beat Napoleon? No. It sure did have an effect, though. It's not, I wouldn't call it a myth, but it was not the reason. It wasn't the deciding factor. It was certainly, it certainly became a decisive element when you consider the lack of food, the lack of proper clothing, the distance to get to Moscow. And, you know, the thing is that the Russians, there's this great model. I'll Google it for you. You can Google it if you just type in, it's this pictograph of the Russian forces going into, or the Napoleon's forces going into Russia and then coming out. And you see this massive army going in, and then this trickle coming out. And what the Russians did was they allowed Napoleon to bring his entire army, or the bulk of it, as far into Russia as he could. And then along the way, they just picked him off little by little. No major engagements, no major battles to weaken their forces, just little by little. Let him bring the whole thing in. And then allowed the terrain, the weather, Napoleon's own miscalculations and ego to attrit and deplete his force.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the way out, when Napoleon made the decision on his own, okay, we can't sustain this battle. We're heading back. Then the Russians attacked them on the whole way out. So again, the defender often has. There you go.
Is
that
this
red,
it? Okay.
Yeah, that red is kind of this this visual of the number of forces going in, and at the far end point, that's Moscow, and then the gray line is them coming back, and you see that pivotal point to where Napoleon had on the return line, on the gray on the timeline, where Napoleon had to split his forces, and that's when the Russians really hammered him. So look at the size of the force, just the sheer size in red of the forces going in and how they were treated over time. But then at the point of return is when they really got hit hard, and Napoleon returns to France with practically nothing.
Right. I was just trying to, I had a better, here we go. Add this to the stage. That's a little bit bigger, just so that we can see. So yeah, you see where he split his troops, 50,000, 33,000 going different directions at some place called Beaubert. But yeah, by the time he's fully out of there, he's down to like 8,000 or 4,000.
He returns with practically nothing. And two things that the Prussians learned and the Russians learned from this was that coalitions matter, and strategic reach. This is where the idea of termination and culmination come into play, which I am deeply concerned with in the war with Iran, in that termination is, as the commander or as the one side, you determine this war is going to end at this point on these terms. I'm going to terminate this conflict when I've achieved X. Culmination is, I no longer have the means. I know I can no longer fight. I'm out of missiles. I'm out of bullets. I'm out of soldiers. I have culminated. Ideally, if you want to make perfect use of your nation's resources, you want that termination point and that culmination point to be the same.
Right.
We have terminated at the point to where we have nothing left. Perfect victory.
Yeah.
In reality, you probably won't have that perfect synchronicity. So you want your conflict you want your forces to last longer. So you want to terminate before you culminate. But in the worst case scenario, you culminate before you're able to reach your terminal objective, and that's strategic loss. That's what I fear with what we're facing now in Iran, is this similar idea, not necessarily troops on the ground, but in resources and assets to fight this type of warfare. Imagine that graph, and in the beginning of it is the full arsenal of U.S. missiles. Patriots, JASSMs, all of our missiles and all of our exquisite capability that's now largely been depleted greatly. So if we get into another large-scale conflict, how do we sustain it? And then if we get ourselves into something that we can't just walk away from, how then are we attrited as we try to then terminate this conflict, which won't be on our terms? So this, to me, this graph is you could take what's going on in Iran right now and look at this in terms of U.S. resources over time and that turning point. I think right now we are at that turning point with how this Navy increase in conflict in the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman can really get out of hand really quick.
Now, if I remember correctly, Clauswitz poses the question about Napoleon's defeat against Russia in 1812 of, why did this happen? It's like Monday morning quarterbacking it.
Yeah.
And he says, I don't know if he ever answered it, but I think he asks the question, was it an excess of force, an overextension of force, or was it an excess or a deficiency of energy? And I think you just answered that. You believe he overextended himself. He did too much, right?
Well, it depends. Again, it all goes back to what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah. Yeah.
What Napoleon's core commanders like Davout and Renoir and others had told him were, hey, we don't have to march to Moscow to strategically cut off Russia. We don't have to. We can stick right here on the border. This is the only way through, and we can starve them out through the winter by not allowing anything from Europe over. We don't have to go to Moscow to achieve this end. But if you do want us to go to Moscow, we're going to have to raise a shit ton of people, supplies, wagon trains, artillery, uniforms, and we're going to be gone for months. What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's when you see the hubris in war come out, which, you see every day from a guy like Pete Hegseth, in that this going to war with Iran, shooting missiles, shooting bullets, dropping bombs to achieve what? Because at the end state of what we might achieve at best at this point is going to bring us back very much to the same diplomatic solution that we had prior to this war happening. So it's a matter of now, does the United States go in? Do we have better missiles? We do. But we don't have enough better missiles to defend ourselves against their onslaught of not as good missiles, right? You know what I mean? They're Shaheeds. They have thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And yes, is the Patriot missile, is the JASSM missile, is the Tomahawk missile, the SM-3, the SM-6 exquisite and make those trashy one-way drones look dumb? Of course, but we don't have enough. Same thing in this. When Napoleon marched his army, did Russia know that his army was better? Of course. So they decided not to fight. Why fight an army you know you're going to lose to when you can let your army break down under the own weight of its size? Right. Then hit them when they're weak. And that's exactly what we're finding ourselves in with Iran, is that why go toe-to-toe and go seeking the U.S. Navy when we can just lure them to us by closing off the Strait of Hormuz and say, come get it. And every time they do, it's death by 1,000 cuts. That's where we take Clauswitz and Sun Tzu and put them together, right? So, yeah, it's really interesting when you start looking at these conflicts throughout history, that you really see that, wow, there are some things that do change in war: technology, capability, weapons, artillery. But there are a lot of things that, regardless of how technologically advanced or modern the military may be, there's certain things that do not change.
Very true. Now, in the book, Clausewitz suggests that, quote, if any tactic proves efficacious, it is quickly in use again. Nations copy one another. What works, and it's replicated. When you look at all the fronts of this Iran war right now, what do you think? And I'm speaking too of the fifth column as well, as you were talking about. But what do you think other countries are taking note of in this war?
Well, the United States last week just released this media campaign showing the new our new drone, and said, U.S. military always having the advantage on the battlefield. And it's an exact copy.
It's the Shahed
of the Shahed 130, to the T. You just painted it a different color and slapped an American flag on it. But it's the exact same thing. And if you look at Ukraine and Russia, Russia came in with this: we're a huge army, we have tanks, we have nukes, we have missiles, we're going to destroy this little Ukrainian army. And Ukraine said, okay, well, the international community isn't going to really let you do that. So we're going to hold on as long as we can. And we're going to take out all of your fancy, expensive stuff with off-the-shelf drones. And then now you see, what is Russia doing? Russia has now spent millions of dollars on revamping their front lines to fight in the same way that the Ukrainians were fighting. The same thing in the American experience in Vietnam, where we sent in the 101st and the 82nd and the 24th Infantry Division. And we realized, if we're going, that's great against the North Vietnamese army, when and if we ever do get to fight them, which was rare. If we're going to fight the Viet Cong, we have to have a military force like that. And that's what gave birth to the Green Berets. That's what gave birth to special operations. So yes, efficacy, the efficaciousness of tactics breeds replication or copying in a lot of cases. And nations do this back and forth. And if you're Israel, you just steal it. If you're other nations, you replicate and copy. But when you look at the what we're seeing just in on the battlefield in the, oh, that looks good, we're going to make one. Oh, that looks good, we're going to make one. And there's always this attempt. That's where the art and science, right? Because Clausewitz talks about the art of war and the science in war, and that is very true. But that is where the science and the art come together, because it's not just a matter of, ooh, I now have this piece of technology that matches the enemy's piece of technology, therefore we are equal. That's not true. Your technology may be the same. It matters in terms of how you use it. And that's the art. So actually in the military, the US military, they send us to the Command and General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And the whole year we're there is a master's course in military art and science, masters in military art and science. So it's a real thing. It's, the way I like to say it is that science is how you fight the war. The art is the why and purpose. And you always have to intertwine the two if you're going to succeed. The beans and bullets. If I have X amount of soldiers for X amount of days over X amount of terrain, I need this much stuff. That's science, right? You can work out that equation. But when to attack, how to attack, when the enemy at its most vulnerable, when does Washington put dudes in boats and cross the Delaware? Not when the Hessians are at stand to, but when they're partying after Christmas, right? There's the art, how to do it, but then when to do it. And I think that's where we're really losing right now in this conflict is not necessarily in the how. I mean, no other army really matches the U.S. No other Navy really comes close to the United States Navy in sheer size, technology, and capability. But what we're seeing right now from what Iran's ability to withhold is how, the art.
Is the main thing that countries are taking note of is the use of drone technology? Is that basically what your answer is? It's funny that America is actually copying Iran now.
Yeah, if you go look at it, if you just look at I forget what the name of it was. It's the US's newest drone. You can just I think if you just copy like US newest drone, you'll see a little advertisement they had for it where it says, the US warfighter always maintaining the edge. And you look at it and you're like, that's the Shahed 138 just painted a different color.
Right.
But to your point, drone technology is one of the things we've seen replicated and advanced. But what we're not seeing, which I think is being replicated the most, we're not seeing it. It's not necessarily in the visual realm. Is cyber and electronic warfare. Because I think in the early days of the war, going back to how almost immediately Iran had the ability to electronically defeat, to jam, and in some cases jam, seize, and take some of our MQ-9 drones, our Predators, and our M4Q Tritons, very expensive, very capable drones. Iran didn't just shoot them down; they jammed them, took them over, and then seized them, and then copied them. So when you look at the in that respect, prior to this war kicking off, it was January timeframe. The United States was flying a Triton MQ-4 over the Persian Gulf, conducting reconnaissance on the Iranian coast. And the IRGC, through electronic jamming, seized the signal, took it, landed it, and reversed engineering its GPS sequencing, its code. Basically, for GPS and others, you have M code sequencing, where the code that goes up to say, hey, I'm here, and the code that comes back down to says, hey, this is me, I'm you. They figured out that algorithm. They figured out that code that the United States is using. And now you see how Iran has been able to defeat certain air defense mechanisms against the United States is because of that. So at the tangible in-hand level, I think drone technology is ever expanding, and that's going to continue, kind of like the IED threat throughout the global war on terror. But what we're really going to advance that we're not seeing is that electronic warfare, because that's really what led Ukraine to now have to use these wire-guided, fiber optic guided drones, is because both sides, Russia and Ukraine, now have both advanced their ability to jam or intercept. So now they've just gone back to old school. Don't fly it with a remote control. Fly it with a wire. So we're going to see some advancements, and then we're going to see retro, going back to things that once were that work. But
you fly it with a wire.
Oh, you can, if you go Google this picture, Ukrainian frontline wire guided drone wires, and you'll see this entire battlefield for hundreds of kilometers just covered in very thin silk-like optic wire, fiber optic cable, very, 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 very thin, like hairline thin. So now the Ukrainians are flying these drones. Basically, when the drone launches, there's a spool with it, much like a kite. And it's now flown with this optical wire to where the controller has direct control of it with a remote control, or directly to the drone itself, to where it can't be jammed. It can't be electronically jammed.
I see.
Back in the day, like if when TVs first started coming out with remotes, they still had the wire on it.
Yeah, right.
And then once the TV came out with the normal remote, if you were sitting in front of the TV, Dad couldn't change the channel because you were blocking it. But if you still had the wire remote, you could, because it was a direct connection. So this is now that same thing at a grand scale. And these wires, these optic wire, are hundreds of kilometers long.
What? And I was just about to ask that. That's crazy.
It is insane. I've seen, like, when I was in my last job in U.S. Special Operations Command, we were working a lot on this problem set on the Ukrainian front line with drones, because they were just advancing so fast. And some of the drone technology at its most basic level, I'm talking the equivalent of a DJI Mavic drone that you can buy at Walmart, duct tape a grenade to it and fly that thing into a tank and hit it at the right point, you can destroy a tank. So no longer are the days where, in order to, look at what HZB is doing in southern Lebanon. They're destroying Merkava tanks with literally off-the-shelf 3D printed drones. So that is the true nature of asymmetric. That's not unconventional. That's asymmetric. What's
the difference between asymmetric and unconventional?
So I would say it's almost like a Venn diagram. Can something be asymmetric and unconventional? Can something be asymmetric but conventional? Or can something be unconventional and non-asymmetric?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Conventional is the means of fighting in traditional conventional status. Like, I have an army, you have an army. We're going to fight. We're going to maneuver. Where there's general parity in our forces. It's a very conventional fight. Unconventional would be my side is going to use U.S. Special Forces to train with an indigenous force to fight the enemy along the flanks, using, but that military force that we're training is using conventional force. They're using conventional means. So it's unconventional because of the way that it's being fought with the forces that are being fought. Yeah. Now, if now asymmetric would be, I'm going up against an enemy that I know has dominance or superiority over me in a certain capability. So do I just allow them to defeat me in that realm, or do I bring something to the table asymmetrically to fight against it? And I would say the Shahed drone is an asymmetric capability because it is head to head with conventional missiles and bombs and rockets but it's done in an asymmetric way, that it doesn't fight in the same way that the conventional munitions fight. Now, let's say you were to take a partnered force, let's say the Kurds, raise the Kurds, have U.S. Army conventional forces fighting face-to-face with Iranian forces head-to-head, and you have special forces with the Kurds fighting on the fifth column or on the flanks, using asymmetric weapons like one-way off-the-shelf drones. You would have an unconventional war being fought asymmetrically. You can have a conventional war that is fought asymmetric, which would, I think you would describe this war with Iran. But then to even further kind of muddy that in terms of the conventional, unconventional, asymmetric, the United States right now, as we look at the region, we really don't have any unconventional options. Using special forces doesn't mean unconventional. We don't really have any unconventional options. And now we're trying to get into the asymmetric game. The problem with that is that if I'm Iran and this is the US has these exquisite missiles. So I developed the Shahed one-way drone to overwhelm that capability. And then I'm the US and I say, ooh, I want that too. So I make the same thing. Well, now the two asymmetries are symmetric. So now you just have conventional drone warfare.
Yeah,
which can get pretty crazy. Look at the front line with Ukraine and Russia. The asymmetric drone warfare has now gone into conventional symmetric drone warfare, and it's insane. It's insane. Like, it's.
You mean between Russia and Ukraine, Russia has the advantage in drone technology, would you say?
I would say that Russia has the advantage in terms of their ability to produce mass quantity.
Okay.
I think in the beginning of the war, Ukraine definitely had the leg up or the advantage in their use of drones on the battlefield. Not only the types, but how to use them. They were very good. Like, I don't even the United States military now, in the Army, there is a military occupational specialty now, where we recruit young Americans to be drone operators, and these young soldiers, to watch them fly these drones is something out of the sci-fi books, man. They are so good at it. Like, they can take a drone with, similar to that top right picture, a drone of that size, potentially armed with ammunition, and they can fly this thing so low through. I mean, they can fly it through the window into a bedroom and put it right on the dining room table of a bad guy. I mean, it is insane how advanced drone technology has become. It's the equivalent of gunpowder when China first introduced gunpowder to the battlefield, is what drones are now doing. And it's fascinating because it's a field that is so easy to develop and then use. So I think it's somewhat laughable that when the United States created its drone, I'm trying to find the name of it because it's the one the Lucas drone. If you type in the US Lucas drone, it is the Shahed. It is the Shahed 138.
Okay.
So when you're fighting conventionally and you say, okay, I have all this exquisite stuff. Oh man, they're beating me with this asymmetric capability. It's not symmetric. They're fighting me with this asymmetric capability. So then I'm going to create something to match their asymmetric capability. Well, then by definition, you've just created symmetry.
Symmetry, right.
The problem with that is that Iran, if you want to bring it down to make it symmetrical, make it equal. Well, yeah. Iran's been doing this game for a lot longer than we have, so they've already figured a lot of the things out. So it's almost like that's why when I call, like, when Iran is winning at the strategic level, it's because they've employed weapons that in order for us to match or defeat, we have to come to their level. We have to make symmetric out of their asymmetry. And when a stronger power has to fight for symmetry to the asymmetric threat, well, the asymmetric threat is winning. That's the definition of victory.
Yeah.
So it's incredible to see the advancements in this, and why I think that when anyone says that that Iran is obliterated or has no capability, it's laughable. It's embarrassing.
You kind of answered my question, because I'm thinking, obviously the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Why doesn't the U.S. just pull back its aircraft carriers, just focus on manufacturing drones in mass and try something new? But like you said,
for a couple reasons. One, I think that a lot of our current military leadership lack that type of asymmetric vision, because we are so stuck in 2+ decades of the global war on terror. What the U.S. military did over the years of counterinsurgency, coin doctrine, is really just find a way to fight an asymmetric threat conventionally with overwhelming force, which, as we've seen in Iraq, as we've seen in Afghanistan, as we've seen in Syria, doesn't work. So in this case, to your point, a couple reasons. I think that our current military leaders, those that are left, those that haven't been purged, lack that vision at that level. Because let's look at Admiral Brad Cooper. Admiral Brad Cooper spent his entire career, 30, 40 years, however long he's been in the United States Navy. Has he commanded joint forces at times? Yes. But does he understand asymmetric warfare? Does he understand the unconventional insurgency, counterinsurgency, the things that you have to consider on the ground as an on the ground operator? No, he does not. He can pretend to, but he just doesn't. That's like me saying, oh, I have a college degree, so I can just walk in and do brain surgery. No. Yeah. Does a doctor also have a degree? Yes, but you don't have that experience. Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Dan Kane was a National Guard Air Force pilot who the last time he got behind the seat of a jet and actually flew a mission was like in 2001. So, and at that point, this is a guy that got out of the military and retired that Trump brought back in. So at the highest levels of our leadership, they lack the vision and the experience to understand something that, like what you just suggested, but also that was one. Two, the military industrial complex will not allow that to happen. Why? Oh, you're going to go to producing these $20,000 to $25,000 drones. You're not going to buy our $6.5 million missile anymore. Oh well, we can't have that. So they make the Lucas drone, and the only thing that's different about the Lucas drone from the Shahed 138 is that ours costs about 3 times as much. It's the only difference, which completely defeats the purpose.
Right.
You want a cheap, off-the-shelf, one-way option that you can mass. And we asked, what we needed was a bunch of Ford Tauruses, and we got a bunch of BMWs. And so it's like, wow, that's going to be expensive. So
I feel like you're being a little unfair to the defense contractors. I mean, they're making a lot of money off of this, and I feel like that's what's supposed to be done. You should be thinking about the shareholders, Anthony. And I want to apologize to YouTube on behalf of Anthony. He's being very anti-symmetric right now, talking about all this war. That is not. And by the way, Anthony, I think you fail to recognize the power of the new Dark Eagle missile. Wait, not the actual Dark Eagle.
Yeah.
But the Dark Eagle missile. Okay. Yeah. This is a miracle weapon that is going to save us in this war. We're going to become victors, clearly. What do you make of this in all seriousness? What do you make of the Dark Eagle as being a tide turner in this war? Is it all just bluster?
I think the Dark Eagle is a military industrial complex wet dream. Does it do a lot of great stuff? It's cool. It looks awesome. It's really big. It flies Mach 5, open source, classified, probably even faster. All these great things that it does. But again, you've got to pick your target, and you're limited in what you can hit. So is it exquisite? Yes. Is it going to be a tide turner, or is it going to change the nature of war? Is Iran going to go running to the hills and say, oh my God, now they have the Dark Eagle? No. This is not the end of Top Gun Maverick when he gets into the experimental aircraft and flies away, and there's this big dramatic moment. No, this is yet another. Again, I'll tell you, right before we introduce this, and this is not new. The technology for the Dark Eagle is a hypersonic Mach 5 plus missile is not new in concept. Russia, China, Iran have these, and they've used them. We're behind in that in terms of us using them. But really, what do hypersonic missiles do once the bombing campaign has met its terminal objective? What would it do for us now? It still can't penetrate the 60 meters of granite at Pickaxe Mountain, where any enriched uranium, if it exists, would be. So what does it do? I mean, it can fly around the world 3 times and hit its target. What target of what importance and when?
I'm pretty sure we could blow up a bridge in Iran with it, though.
Oh, we can blow up girls' schools. We can blow up bridges.
Dark jokes.
We can blow up water facilities. I mean, but that's how the United States now, with our Tomahawks. Yeah, the Tomahawk missile is one of the most advanced full motion video, full control, terminal to target munitions in the world. And what did we use it for? To strike a children's school in Iran. So yeah, we can have the most exquisite missiles and capabilities. How we use it, what the objective is, and how many we have. If in that I always like this scene from Braveheart in the first battle, the Battle of Stirling, when the English show up and they're like, no army has defeated cavalry in 100 years. And Braveheart shows up and he gives his little speech, right? And you've got the clans have come together. So you have unconventional warfare. You don't have dudes with horses and long swords and armor. You've got farmers with sticks and pitchforks. And so what do? He devises a plan to have the other clan come in later and make them think that they ran away. But they take all those wooden poles, the big wooden poles.
Yeah, that's right. And they set a trap.
They lay them on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they realize we don't have horses.
Yeah.
We don't have cavalry. We don't have armored troops. So we can't go head to head against that. It would be stupid to try to match that capability. So this is another thing out of what Clauswitz developed in the understanding of is the center of gravity. Okay. What is the center of gravity? So again, if you look at that trinity, the people, the army, the government, what is the center of gravity? I would say oftentimes in the United States, our center of gravity is the will of the people, right? The people get tired of it. In World War II, we found that, we can't defeat Germany's tanks. The Leopard tank is so advanced, we can't defeat it. So we need to defeat their ability to make them. So what did we start doing? We started bombing ball bearing plants because without ball bearings, they couldn't build their tanks. Center of gravity. You don't go against the thing that you can't beat. You go against the thing that you can beat that defeats their capability. So if I'm Iran and I'm looking at, the army is going, the military, US is going to bring in their Dark Eagle. Well, I'm just going to button up and just say, send them. And then once they fire them, I'm going to pop up, pull up my pointed sticks as the cavalry approaches and win on the battlefield. So it's the same notion is that, we have the armored cavalry. We have the armored horse troops. So, but the Dark Eagle, I mean, it is impressive. It flies very fast. I think they even painted it black. It looks really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And
aren't there like 8 of them? It's like they don't even have a lot of them, and it takes a lot.
There's less than a 6-pack of beer. You got to be very precise when you come out. And it's like It's like the Dark Eagle. Okay, let's bomb everything. Well, we only have 8.
It kind of feels like when Hitler was like trying to save the war and reassure his people, like, we've got these miracle weapons. Don't worry, they're coming. We're gonna turn everything around.
Exactly.
You mentioned. Well, go ahead.
No, you're right. Exactly.
You mentioned, these generals and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and how there's Navy generals, there's Air Force generals. Do we have a Field Marshal General in the Joint Chiefs of Staff? Is the ground component underrepresented by our U.S. military?
I think that it is, because if you look at, let's just look at right now, who's in charge of what. U.S. Central Command is commanded by a Navy admiral, not an Army general, not a Marine, a Navy admiral. U.S. Indo-PACOM is commanded by a Navy admiral. Now, when you consider Indo-PACOM or the Indo-Pacific, it makes sense to have a Navy Geographic Combatant Command commander. But when you're talking about the region of Central Command, Western, Central, and Southeast and Southwest Asia, a lot of land, a lot of ground, a lot of use of land-based missiles, land-based options. And I'm by no means am I saying is Admiral Brad Cooper unintelligent, but what I'm saying is that he doesn't have that ground force experience in terms of grand strategy, lines of effort, but the other thing that Admiral Brad Cooper is at a strong disadvantage is the commander-in-chief that he serves, and that I don't think that he's been given a very clear objective in terms of, Admiral Cooper, we're going to accomplish this, because it's gone from, we're going to destroy their missiles, we're going to destroy their carriers, we're going to destroy their Navy, we're going to destroy their Air Force, we're going to take away their means to make nukes, we're going to take away their nukes, we're going to take back the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to unblock the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to block the block of the Strait of Hormuz. Now we're going to do Project Freedom. Now we're going to start bombing again. If you're the Geographic Combatant Commander, you're like, what are we doing? So he's at a disadvantage there as well. But then, look at the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff right now, a once retired, brought on back to active duty National Guard Air Force officer who's never commanded on the ground, who's never commanded troops. Your Central Command, Navy commander, U.S. Special Operations Command, a Navy SEAL, Mitch Bradley.
Well, Central Command, when they say CENTCOM, they mean a specific region of the world where the U.S. military operates.
Yeah, so not Central Command like central headquarters.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Central Command. So the U.S. Central Area of Responsibility, or the geographic portion of the world that the United States has broken up and given under the command of various 4-star generals and admirals. You have U.S. Northern Command. That's Mexico, United States, Canada, all the way up north. You've got Southern Command. That's the global South. You have U.S. Indo-PACOM. That's the Indo-Pacific part of the world.
Gotcha.
You have Central Command. That's Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Levant, West, Central, and Southeast Asia. Then you have European Command. That's all of Central and Western Europe. Then you have AFRICOM, or Africa Command. That's the continent of Africa. Those are your geographic combatant commands, 4-star generals, like think about the old days of the British Navy, your Admiral York, and he was in charge of the colonies. We split up the world and we gave him in charge. Then you have your service commanders, or your service chiefs, 4-star generals. That's your chief of staff of the Army. That's your chief of naval operations, commandant of the Marine Corps, all of the services. So when you have a geographic combatant commander, think that's a theater commander. That commander is, like, for example, in the case of Brad Cooper, as a Navy guy, is commanding over Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force, Cyber Force, Space Force, Special Operations, Navy SEALs, Rangers, Delta, he commands it all in theater. So when you have someone that their experience is somewhat limited to surface warfare or the Navy at sea, it's quite a disadvantage when you're looking at a land-based war in terms of aircraft, logistics, missiles, missile defense, deployment of soldiers. I always thought that the best general officers typically come from artillery and logistics.
Okay. So if you had the power to correct this, I mean, we would put in charge in Central Command, we would put in charge a field marshal or somebody that was specialized in ground forces rather than like you said, a Navy general.
Well, you know, it's kind of now, you know, we can see, we have hindsight to see how this war has kind of evolved. Is it possible that when you see Central, first of all, I would have long ago redrawn the lines in terms of the geographic combatant commands. Because when you look at U.S. Central Command, you have a lot of land, but you also have a lot of water. I mean, you have the Indian Ocean, you have the Arabian Sea, you have the Gulf of Oman, you have the Persian Gulf, you have the Red Sea, you have a lot of water, but the Mediterranean Sea, but you also have a lot of land. So I think that these geographic combatant commands that were kind of carved out post World War II of, okay, we're going to have this part of the world, this part of the world, this part of the world, this part of the world. You're going to be in charge of that part of the world. You're going to report directly to the president. The world has changed in such a way that I think that those geographic combatant command regions should be relooked at. But then the other question is, why should the United States be exercising authority and control over the world?
Well, that is a given. Yeah. I mean, my question, had to presume, I had to bake in a lot of presumptions about our world with that question. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We have no business, of course, in the Middle East and all these other.
Can you imagine if China appointed a series of admirals and they said, hey, Admiral so-and-so, you're going to be in charge of
the American
and all military operations for the United States. General so-and-so, you're going to be in charge for all military operations for Australia. And they laid out this map and said, look what we're in charge of. We would flip our shit. We'd be like, what? Oh, no. But we now have here at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, last year we stood up a new command, a new 4-star command called, and I'm not making this up, it sounds like something right out of like Star Wars. Star Wars, but what was that Troopers movie?
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. We have this new command called Western Hemisphere Command. Not joking.
Well, wait, is that anything different from what, like you said, you went through the different theaters or the different regions. You said Northern Command was basically the Western Hemisphere. Is that?
Well, Northern Command and Southern Command share the Western Hemisphere.
Western Hemisphere, right.
But now you have over that, you have Southern Command. Southern Command was that the Admiral Halsey, who resigned when the boat strike operations started to begin. He resigned.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The guy that replaced him is a Marine. And then you have Northern Command. But now over North and South, you have this Western Hemisphere Command.
It's like oversight, basically.
I guess we're going to have. So I have not yet seen Eastern Hemisphere Command emerge. I would imagine at some point it will. But yeah, we took U.S. Forces Command, basically the command over all deployable U.S. forces. And we took that command away and we remade this Western Hemisphere Command that's now focusing on the Western Hemisphere. But to your point, we already have geographic combatant commanders for Northcom and Southcom. So this guy is primarily this guy or gal, I don't know who the commander is. Their focus is on is domestic, is on the United States. So it's like, okay, that's concerning.
Yeah, it sounds like the imperial boomerang all over again.
Yeah. So it's it's just as I day by day as I see how the current conflict is unfolding, refolding, getting thrown in the laundry, re-ironed, refolded, however you want to describe it. I look at Clauswitz and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of things in here that Clauswitz warned us against. Like,
yeah,
don't
there's so much in that book we haven't even touched on, but one of the things was he goes through moral courage versus physical courage, and I found that to be pretty enlightening, insightful. Whereas physical danger on the page looks like fear and anxiety, but courage becomes, and this is one of my favorite words in that book, counterpoise. Courage becomes the counterpoise which defies reason. You should be, fearful of physical danger, but because there's this thing called courage, you are able to overcome that fear, and that is, I guess, courage that defies reason would be moral courage. Or he says that you have to have a balance of moral courage and physical courage, and if you can match those two, you have a genius of a military general or a brave fighter. But that wasn't really a question to you. I was just sort of.
No, it's a great observation, though. I think it's so important to understand the two, that there is physical courage, on the front line, willing to risk your life for yourself or for your, to fight for your life or risk your life for your buddies.
Mm-hmm.
That's physical courage. Does physical courage necessarily require an understanding of the situation that you're in? No.
Mm-hmm.
Moral courage, however, requires that not only are you in physical danger, but your understanding of the situation of the physical danger that you are in, you understand what is the true risk of it all. Like, you can have physical courage, but not realize that, hey, over that ridgeline is the entire Russian army. Moral courage, you would say, okay, well, we're in this, we're fighting, and we know what's coming. Therefore, I'm going to stay and I'm going to fight. That would be the exhibition of courage, where, a lot of people, when they see movies, they watch Rambo or whatever it is, they think that that's courage. But when you're, if you're with your infantry platoon in combat, in battle, and you are leading, or you're an infantryman in battle, far from the rear, far from support, you're on the front lines, and you're facing something that is existential in its threat, where you could die doing it, and you not only understand the risk that you are taking in that moment, but you understand the greater risk of what could happen to not only yourself but everyone with you. And then you still continue to fight on, not haphazardly. You don't just do it willy-nilly. Of course, you plan and you mitigate risk, but that's where it comes down to it, to where in many things there has to be that modicum of courage, because nothing is guaranteed. And
I feel like you're a perfect example of both moral courage and physical courage, in the sense that you are a combat veteran. You're obviously physically courageous to go into combat, face danger. And I feel like your moral courage has, I'm not saying you didn't have moral courage before, but given, the Gaza genocide and you speaking out and whistleblowing, I feel like that was an example of moral courage.
Well, I'll share something with you, that's personal, in terms of that very discussion, is that, through the years in the military, physical courage, right? Jumping out of airplanes, going into combat, earning awards and medals, and leading America's best in the front lines of the war on terror, and that takes courage. But in doing it, you're recognized for your service. You're told it's the right thing. You get pat on the back and attaboys. you're recognized with little ribbons and awards and recognition, and it's courage, but you have the encouragement of your courage that you're doing the right thing. Moral courage, very often in moral courage, you go up against resistance to what you feel is the right thing. And in Gaza, in witnessing what I saw, I've reflected on this, like in that moment, the Tony of that moment, and what I witnessed, there were options laid before me. I could have said nothing, done nothing, knowing that the vast majority of the world would be none the wiser.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone that may be the wiser, would they ever know that I was there? And I could have just continued to make a lot of money, look the other way, come back, everybody that the military and the government, oh, this is great, this is awesome. But in that moment, in looking at that, I looked at that in terms of, this is wrong. This is morally, ethically, in principle, this is wrong. And I know that I'm right, that this is wrong, no matter what anybody else says, based on my principles and my moral courage. And one day, the truth will be seen. But then again, one day, the truth may never be seen. It doesn't make what's wrong in the moment still not wrong. And that, I think, for the first time in my adult life, was a real test of my moral courage. I've been in situations where I've had to exercise moral courage, but in this point, I looked at it, I'm 44 years old now. I served in the military for 25 years. I built this legacy for myself. I can go quietly into the night in my retirement and just enjoy life. I don't need any of this. It's not my problem. And who am I to try to save this?
Yeah.
I had every excuse to walk away and say, this isn't my problem. But I then realized that, well, that's cowardice. That's the definition of a coward, to be faced with something that is not wrong just based on societal structure or popularity, but it's wrong to your core, like to who you are as a person. That's wrong. And if you don't stand up in that moment with courage against all of these superficial things, well, then you're a coward. Yeah. So, for me, that was I think one of the greatest tests of my moral courage, in knowing that, and I guess maybe call it naivety, because honestly, when I got back, I thought that, telling people that there was a genocide, people would be like, oh man, let's do something about it. I didn't think that when I said, hey, there's a genocide, that they were going to come back with, oh, you're a traitor. Like, what? Yeah. Like, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. You were surprised at the spinelessness that you were met with. Well, that was brilliant, and thank you for sharing that with us. So lots to comment on, but maybe we could switch the discussion a little bit and focus back on the war for a second, because recently we learned that the U.S. military conducted strikes on Keshem Island and the coastal city of Bandar Abbas, and I mean, we've been talking about this for months now.
We have.
About, the bombing of Keshem Island. When's it going to happen? Seems like it's okay. Well, it's happened. Is this a major escalation? Where do we stand in the war now? Are we heading back to basically total war?
Well, I do think that this is absolutely, without question, re-entering escalation that will escalate much further than what we saw in the first 60 to 62 days of Operation Epic Fury. So when you look at when we looked at the president making the announcement that Operation Epic Fury was over, that by no means was out of military objective success. That was based on politics. That was the president finding the loophole in circumventing the War Powers Act.
Which
saying,
actually wasn't really a loophole, as I learned that the War Powers Act dictates that they look at the deployments themselves, not whether the president rhetorically announces an end to combat, right?
It is not a legitimate loophole.
Yeah.
It is a Donald Trump loophole.
Yeah, right.
It's not. I don't think I think that it's total baloney.
Yeah.
But for Donald Trump, that is a loophole that he and Pete Hegseth think that they shithouse lawyered the U.S. Congress with a look. I don't think it's legitimate at all. But that's why they did it. I mean, Donald Trump has even said that. He's even said that I'm going to send a letter to Congress that says Operation Epic Fury is over. And even in his letter, he wrote, in order to meet the requirements of the War Powers Act, here you go. He didn't even hide it. He's just like, here you go. I'm playing gotcha. I'm playing, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. And then things die down for a couple of days. We go into a weekend, the market ruffles. He comes back and he says, Project Freedom.
Yeah.
And with his launch of Project Freedom, he or Pete Hegseth didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell Kuwait. They didn't tell Saudi Arabia. They didn't tell the UAE. And all of a sudden you have Saudi Arabia and Kuwait saying, whoa, time out. You're going to do what? Where are you going to launch these aircraft from? Where are these ships going to port? In our countries? Nope. And Saudi Arabia and Kuwait both said no. And so within 24 hours, Donald Trump said, Project Freedom's over. We're gonna step back from that a little bit. However, regardless of what we call it, the U.S. Navy is still tinkering around without a clear objective in the Strait of Hormuz as sitting ducks. What is the objective of the United States Navy conducting a distant blockade? Because here's how it works now. People think that U.S. Navy ships, that we are in the Persian Gulf at Iranian ports, or that we are in the Strait of Hormuz protecting the navigable lane. We're not. The U.S. Navy and its ships are south, either all the way down in the Arabian Sea or up in the Gulf of Oman in the pocket, but we're not in the strait. Did the USS the USS Spruance, the USS Canberra, the USS Murphy, the USS Peralta, the USS there was two other ships. Did they successfully traverse the strait? They did, but how they did it is not sustainable, nor is it in line with international law. The way they did it was they didn't come through there. We're the U.S. Navy. Here we are. No, they flipped off all their radar. They turned off all their transponders. They flipped off all their sonar. They turned off all of their radios. They turned off all their identification beacons. They lowered the flag, and they went in and they skirted along the coast of Oman, down into the Gulf of Oman, and then flipped everything back on. Bloop, here we are. And then as soon as they did, wham! That's when they took those missiles from Iran. Iran has an anti-missile battery at Jask, the port of Jask, which is just kind of if you continue to follow the coastline of Iran around the Gulf of Oman, the USS Canberra was hit. We know that. It's potential that over the last 24 hours, another U.S. ship was hit. I find it highly likely that it was. So is the United States, and what has the blockade been doing? Well, commercial ships that actually make it through the strait, they come into the Gulf of Oman. They're like, oh yeah, home free. And who's there? The United States Navy. And what do we tell them? Turn around. And on 5 occasions now, we have hit commercial ships. We've killed dozens of commercial merchant sailors. We're the bad guy in this blockade of a blockade. So I think when we look at the strikes on Qasem Island, I've always saw Qasem Island as key terrain, a key piece of terrain that who controls it controls the strait.
Really? Okay.
At least directly. If you think of because if you look at how the strait is formed, right? You have the Persian Gulf, You have the UAE and Oman that make that very sharp point, that curve, that hard turn.
Right.
And the navigable channel of the Strait of Hormuz is about 11 and a half nautical miles that comes right through the center of that. Any too far to the southwest, you're gonna get stuck. Any too far to the northeast, you're gonna get stuck. It's a very narrow navigable channel for these large container ships. Now, can a U.S. Navy littoral combat ship or a U.S. Navy cruiser or a U.S. Navy destroyer slip through around the edge? Sure, they can, because they're flat bottom or they have higher buoyancy. But these commercial containers, no way. They have to use the navigable channel. So if you look at where Qasem Island is in relation to the navigable channel, he who controls Qasem Island can physically control the strait by land. And it's much better to control or dominate a piece of key terrain by land if you can, kind of like the Rock of Gibraltar, right? Like if you wanted to control Gibraltar, the pass into the Mediterranean, you would want to control the Rock of Gibraltar. You would want to control the high ground. So same concept as to why Israel wants the Golan Heights. They want to maintain the high ground over Syria and the Valley Sheba Farms in Lebanon. So in this case, Qasem Island is very, very, very important. And I think Donald Trump has tried time and time again with deals and threats and negotiations that have led to nothing. So what we've seen in the last few hours or day and a half, the strikes on Qasem Island, that to me that is in preparation of an amphibious assault. I do believe that's coming.
So that would be ground troops, right? Trying to take the island, essentially, an amphibious-born assault on the island. But like you said, like, we're able to get in, but are we able to get out? How are we going to hold this island?
Well, see, therein lies the question, to where this is much like that scenario when Napoleon went into Russia. We can bring all the forces in and force our way in. Can we get out without great loss? So when you look at where Qasem Island is located, to take just Qasem Island would be foolish. Much like the island campaign of the South Pacific in World War II, you can't just jump straight to Okinawa, straight to mainland Japan. You island hop. Okay. So if you look around the Qasem, you've got Hormuz Island, for which the Strait of Hormuz has its namesake. You have Hormuz Island. You have Qasem Island. There's an island right off the southern tip of Qasem Island. And I think right over there, that other one right there, I think that's Hormuz Island. That other.
Yeah, this one right up here, Hormuz Island. Yeah. Then you got Larik.
Yep. So if you look at these islands, there's also an old auxiliary airfield there, so you could project air power. Imagine like an Iwo Jima. The reason we wanted Iwo Jima is because of the high ground and because it had an airfield that we could extend. It would be very beneficial to U.S. and Israeli operations to have a closer airfield than having to fly from the UAE or from Israel, especially since the UAE is now become part of this calculus, part of this equation. For the UAE to do we're just innocent victims, baloney. You don't get to play that card. You are a belligerent in this conflict now. So sucks to be so close to Iran. But when you look at the why conduct strikes, airstrikes, missile strikes on Qasem Island, that is preparatory fire. Yeah. That is a preparatory operation. And then you ask yourself, well, for what? Well, we know that the United States is attempting to penetrate that curve of the strait. That's where the ships, the USS Canberra, the USS Murphy, the USS Peralta, the USS Spruance, where they were operating, was in the Gulf of Oman side of the strait, right up by that curve, not going into the Persian Gulf, but right up in that area there, because we're attempting to penetrate. We're attempting to penetrate with a guided missile destroyer, a cruiser, an electronic warfare anti-air defense cruiser, which is the Spruance. We're trying to push them in to establish that cordon line further north to then bring in an amphibious element to Qasem Island. I think that this is something that has always been as a course of action that the United States Navy and the military has been trying to push the administration to other things. But I think now that we've seen Iran is not going to capitulate. Iran isn't just going to fold and say, okay, we'll take whatever plan you give us, benevolent America. I don't think that Iran is going to capitulate. So the next step would then be right now the thorn in the side. I wish he would have known it existed before we started this war. I don't think Donald Trump knew the Strait of Hormuz existed before we began.
I think that's a safe bet. Yeah.
But if you look at, this has become the thorn in his side. We know that this president wants this war to be over. He wants to go back to building a ballroom, refilling the reflecting pool, hiding the Epstein files, talking about UFOs. He doesn't want this war anymore. He realized it was a bad bet. He dipped the toe in. And he's like, ooh, that sucks. I want out. And that mud's thick. It's like, nope, you're stuck. So I think that he wants this to end. And the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's control of it, unequivocal, undeniable control, is a thorn in his side that is going to be Iran's leverage in any negotiations going forward. So I think that Trump will order military forces to conduct an amphibious assault or a special forces raid. If you now look, the Navy's soft ship. So, in all these warships that we have, special operations has its own dedicated naval vessel. It's not an aircraft carrier, but its own dedicated ship that's now ported out of Diego Garcia. So why is that there? That houses Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Rangers, all of your exquisite raid forces. They're all there on this ship, ready for orders. They wouldn't be there if there wasn't something on the horizon. You don't move that asset and those forces to that part of the world if you don't have something planned. So I think that we're going to see something in the coming days where the United States conducts it'll probably be two-pronged. It'll probably be an amphibious assault by sea from the west and south by the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit and the 5th Amphibious Readiness Group, components of each, probably a couple of battalions and a couple of companies from each, with some in reserve. And then we'll see Rangers, 82nd Airborne, maybe a battalion, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, conducting some type of strategic raid, airborne operation or air assault onto the island itself to seize a bridgehead, a lodgement. And I don't think we'll be able to maintain control of Qasem Island for very long, but I think we'll be able to maintain it long enough at great loss. It's not going to come easy. It's not going to be easy peasy cleaning in and out. It's going to come at great loss. But to assert control, to at least get a few maritime container ships through to say, oh, look, see, we opened it. So Donald Trump can then call victory and run away from this thing.
I still just don't see. Thank you for that answer. It's incredible analysis and incredibly educational, but I still just don't see how this amphibious assault is going to get anywhere near Qasem Island. We know that Iran has honeycombed artillery off the coast or on the coast of the strait. They've got mines and missiles. They've got kamikaze dolphins. Yeah. I mean, the list goes on. Where are they going to stage this from? I thought that, all the Gulf Coast countries said, we're not going to house your operations anymore. Literally, where are they going to start this invasion from?
You would likely have it from multiple approaches. I would say it's probably going to come from 3 approaches. You're probably going to have an amphibious force of smaller vessels. You're definitely not bringing an aircraft carrier through there. You're definitely not bringing an armada of cruisers. You have to have very select vessels being, not all destroyers are the same. Not all cruisers are the same. Not all littoral combat ships are the same. They all have a different capability. So it'll be a task force. It'll be, probably something called like the Epic Task Force. It'll be a task force of select ships that have select function, mine clearing, jamming. I could see an amphibious assault coming from the UAE. The UAE is in this now. The UAE is no longer sitting on the fence. The UAE has received, exchanged, sent, gone back and forth with Iran. The UAE is a belligerent in this war now. There's no hiding that.
Yeah.
I think Oman is still we're just here, but the UAE is all in now. So could I see an amphibious assault emanating from the UAE along with the air infiltration, air assault forces? Likely, because it's the closest distance for you where you could bring in air cover over the amphibious assault group going in very quickly. Naval forces, I would see conducting a blockade or a cordon from that tip of Oman towards Iran in a skirmish line or a cordon line to prevent any of the Iranian fast ships, fast movers coming in from the south, because we know that Iran dominates in that entire stretch with their fast mover, their speedboats, their drones, their dolphin-looking suicide drones. So you would have to establish a cordon. You would have to establish a moment of control. But regardless, it will be very costly. It's not. This amphibious assault heading towards Qashem is not going to be clean. It's going to be very costly.
Yeah.
And the U.S. is going to have to put a lot of resources into it, and in doing so. But when you just look at what's been happening over the last 24 hours with U.S. naval ships trying to penetrate the strait, trying to get through, trying to figure out where the mines are, where the mines aren't. You send an Arleigh Burke class anti-mine destroyer through there to then navigate an alternate route that lighter littoral ships can get through. That makes it possible to penetrate. Again, getting in is a lot easier than it will be to get out.
Yeah.
And then when you bring in the forces, I think that's what we've seen. What the Navy has been rehearsing, what the Navy has been practicing these last couple of days, because when you go radio silent at sea, you turn off your navigation, you turn off your GPS, you turn off your radio, you turn off your beacon, you turn off your transponder. No one can see you, and you can't see yourself. And we're not talking about, you're just out on the lake. We're talking about a pretty big ocean. So when you're out there and you flip everything off, you have to then go to navigation by old means, but you also have to be sure you don't hit something, right? Like you got to make sure you don't ground your vessel or hit another boat or hit something else or give your location away by visual means. So I think that's what the Navy is doing right now in these penetration tests of the strait is to rehearse penetrating the strait to establish a cordon line of cruisers and destroyers to then escort and cover for through air and sea an amphibious group with a precision infiltration of special operations to take Qashem Island, establish a temporary operating airfield like they tried to do in Isfahan, and attempt to hold it long enough to capitulate Iran to some type of negotiation, which I don't think will work.
This has got to be the stupidest shit I've ever heard. I mean, you said that if the United States does this amphibious assault, you say they're switching off their transponders, they're going dark, but can't China still see them?
Bingo.
Okay.
That's what I said in the beginning, going back to Iran's magnificent leveraging of diplomacy, right? Iran knows what's coming. They're not stupid. They know, okay, here's our weak points. Here's our leverage points. We know that our control, does Iran even really want or need control of the Strait of Hormuz? No, they're doing it because it's leverage against the United States. It's their leverage. It's their hostage, right? So it's their hostage in this. So they know that. So they're going and saying, hey, China, Donald Trump's coming to visit you next week. Did you see China also recently took Israel off the map?
Did they really?
China
no, I didn't see it.
Took Israel off of their maps, and it's now Palestine on Chinese maps.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So when you look at the direction that China's going, it seems a lot more in line to what Iranians' strategic interests are, right? Open up the Strait of Hormuz, don't give the United States control, connect Iran in the global belt to where China can send and receive directly from Iran, not over the ocean, but through land. Mm-hmm. All of these things that Iran and China have mutual ground on. Same thing with Russia. The foreign minister went to Russia and met with Putin, and Putin came out of that discussion and said, Iran is showing the world how to stand up against the great Satan and the little Satan. Mm-hmm. His word. So when you see, we even have the Pope is even pissed off at Donald Trump. It's pretty bad when so.
Yeah, the Pope, obviously being anti-Semitic by calling for diplomacy. Obviously, he's a monster.
Yeah, if you call for diplomacy or stopping genocide or ceasing the onslaught killing of thousands of children, then you're obviously anti-Semitic, antiseptic,
anti-symmetric, anti-seismic. There's all kinds of ways.
Anti-everything, really. But when you look at the diplomacy factor, to your point, we can do a lot, but we can't flip off imagery intelligence from China that has real time satellite imagery over the strait. So we can flip everything off and be invisible on the spectrum, but you're not invisible to the eye.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing if you see some of the imagery that's coming out where the United States is saying, oh, we weren't there. You don't see our transponder there. We're not there. And then China's releasing video of that looks like you. That looks like you right there.
Those are AI photos.
On fire, right? Yeah. So when you look at this, all these things that are coming together, I just think that that the likelihood of the status quo remaining with Iran in control of the strait, the United States pretending with this distant blockade, where we're losing leverage by the day in negotiation, and that we know that Iran is not going to accept the Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff proposal. I don't even think Trump's read it. We know those things, and Iran knows those things. So I think specifically because of what we've seen with the direct targeting of Hashem Island, that is next as a military objective.
And it's interesting because Trump is scheduled to meet with President Xi Jinping on May 14th in Beijing. And I believe that the Chinese have already signaled if the Americans decide to launch this invasion, don't come to China.
You're right. And back home, what does Trump want? Trump wants to right relations with China, start fixing things at home. He wants to build his ballroom. He wants to, repaint and refill the Lincoln Memorial. He was there. Today he was, or was it yesterday?
I didn't hear that.
Today? He was the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pond is empty. They drained it. And he drove his motorcade into it and did a press conference from the empty basin of the DC reflecting pond. Yeah. Yes.
I missed that.
It's where he called the reporter the effing B word.
Oh.
He was standing in the reflecting pond. It's empty right now. They drained it. He's got his pool guy. Not a joke.
They need the water for data centers,
His
Anthony.
His pool guy is the one resurfacing and painting the reflecting pond in the DC mall. So he wants to go back to the ballroom and the 250-year celebration and finding other ways to bury the Epstein files and talk about UFOs and and focusing on China's big meeting. He wants all that. But this war, and specifically the Strait of Hormuz, is a thorn in his side. Mm-hmm. So I think that he's weighing these options right now of like, okay, do I go to China on May 14th looking like a complete idiot, being held hostage by a nation that I said that I've obliterated their Navy and their Air Force, and I can't unlock the Strait of Hormuz? How's that going to look? But you know, the checkmate in that is that the Iranian foreign minister already went. He went and met with Xi Jinping in person and brokered guarantees. So when it comes to the diplomacy grand strategy game, Iran is kicking our butt right now.
Mm-hmm. All right. So do you think that, just a final prediction on this mounting amphibious assault that you're predicting, do you think that it's going to happen before his visit to China, or do you think it's going to happen afterwards? But it's certainly going to happen, right? Just depends.
So I would think in a
sane world,
I think it's going to happen. The rational man or the rational person, knowing what China's response to that would be, it would be after that visit.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that's necessarily up to Donald Trump, because every day right now that Iran maintains control of the Strait of Hormuz, it's looking worse and worse for the United States Navy militarily in its inability to control that throughway. Because remember, the United States Navy is not preventing ships from entering. Ships are entering the Strait of Hormuz, and when they exit in the Gulf of Oman, they hit the U.S. Navy skirmish line, or the cordon line, and the U.S. Navy sends them back. Says, "Oh, go back." And if they try to run the line, they get shot at. They get blown up. We know that we're using F-15s to blow out the smokestacks of container ships, or Apaches with 30mm cannons to blow out the rear turbines. So we are disabling and or attacking these ships if they don't turn around. Iran's not. We are. Mm-hmm. So day by day, if I were Iran, what I would be doing right now, what I would be doing if I were Iran, I would be giving clearance to every one of those ships to push through the Strait of Hormuz into the Gulf of Oman to overwhelm the Navy cordon. That's what I'd do. And I think that's what they're going to start doing. If you go to the Strait of Hormuz tracker, you can just Google it and you can see all of the beacons of all of the ships that are waiting. They're all pushing further and further closer to the Strait of Hormuz. So if I were Iran, I would say, go. Let's test this U.S. cordon. Is the U.S. going to sink them all? Because if not, well, then the U.S. can't maintain a cordon. If the U.S. does, damn, we just it's a dilemma. So I think that Donald Trump is going to be forced to do something prior to his visit with Xi Jinping, and that is going to have to be carefully orchestrated in terms of a lot of dialogue between, like, hey, Xi, we're going to do this. Is that going to ruin our visit? What about this? And then there's going to be some oops in there because Israel's going to do things that we didn't expect. There's always that wild card, right? Everybody could be sitting at the table, and then, Israel just pulls the tablecloth, and everybody's like, "What the fuck?" So, there's always the Israel wild card.
You've been very gracious of your time. I'm only going to keep you for a few minutes longer. We've got a super chat.
I always enjoyed talking with you, man. Cool. This is great. I'd rather spend my Friday night no other way.
Oh, that's true. It is Friday, huh? Forgot. We're partying it up in here.
Yeah, man.
So Nurse Juliana asks that she would love to know if you have any insight on the fate of Gaza or how different scenarios could play out. Her loved ones are there after many failed attempts to get them to safety. She's afraid she'll be too late if borders aren't open soon. You have any comments for her concerning the fate of Gaza?
So the situation in Gaza has grown ever more dire than it has been ever in history and ever up until this point. Why? Because as the United States has been fighting this war with Iran, and Israel has been pretty much given the green light and okay to continue its war, not only in Gaza, but occupation in the West Bank, further seizure of land in the Golan Heights. We now know that Israel is even pushing north of the Litani River. They're striking even north now of the Litani River. So Israel is unhinged in its occupation and oppression. Now, specifically in Gaza, if you look at the yellow line that was established, the old yellow line, which everything within the IDF controlled area was 53% of Gaza. That yellow line has now been pushed forward even more, leaving behind what Israel now calls the orange line. And everything from the orange line back, they're not giving back. They've said that. We're not giving it back. And the yellow line has moved up even more by meters and meters and meters every day, to where now the entirety of the entire population of Gaza is now crowded, stuffed, trapped in the remaining 30% of Gaza. And Israel is going to continue to do that because they're going unchecked. And what the world has to remember and get focused back on is that Israel has to be stopped. Israel has to be stopped in Gaza and in Lebanon, or when the world attention boomerangs back to, oh my God, we forgot about Gaza because of this war with Iran, we're going to find that there won't be a Gaza. And that is this isn't hyperbole or hypothetical. I have seen their plans. I have seen their plans on paper. They are establishing what they are calling a humanitarian aid transition area, or a hata, which by definition is a concentration camp. Every surviving Palestinian in Gaza will be concentrated to a very small area along the western borderline of this newly established yellow line, and they'll be kept there, where they'll be provided limited water, limited food, no electricity, no medical support, no running water, open sewage. And then they'll start to be given the option. You can leave or you can stay. And that's how they're going to continue the ethnic cleansing and the genocide of Gaza. But we know that in Gaza, the bombing continues every day. In fact, this was real tricky. And next time I go to Washington, I'm going to bring this up to the senators or to the members of Congress that signed on to this. But the $8 billion that the United States released last week in military funding to the region through the Emergency Powers Act, part of that went to restock Israel's Mark 18, Mark 8, GBU 138s, all these bombs that they use in Gaza. That was real sneaky and real, quite frankly, evil on behalf of our Congress, because now Israel is continuing to drop those munitions in Gaza every day. So the situation in Gaza is ever more dire. Is there a peace plan? No. Is there a ceasefire? Never was. Is this 19-point peace plan, board of peace happening? No. Gaza has been left as a lamb in the slaughter to Israel. There's no protection force. There's no international peacekeeping force. There's no U.S.-led security force. In fact, the U.S.-led coordination cell that was in Israel, they've now shut down and left. There's no oversight now. Israel is back to its own accord in what it's doing to Gaza. And I am very fearful for what I think that Israel sees the writing on the wall. Donald Trump is the last president that will be pro-Israel. Donald Trump is the last president that Israel will be able to manipulate, and they know that. So they're going all in. Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, securing Sheba farms and the entirety of the Golan Heights that has been in contention for years from Syria. They're going all in on it because they know this is their last chance. Donald Trump is their last chance to get away with this. So they're going to go all in. And if the world doesn't rise up to stop them, I fear for the future of Gaza and Palestine.
You know, in the days after October 7th, I was listening to Norman Finkelstein. He was asked about his prediction of what was going to happen to Gaza, and it's scary how accurate he was. He's basically said the same thing that you're saying right now that's happened, which was he can only surmise that what will happen to Gaza is what's always been happening to Gaza, what's always been happening to Palestine, is that their territory is going to become ever diminishing. Remember that Gaza was the enclave of Palestine. Like all of the refugees in the Nakba went to Gaza and overwhelmed the indigenous population there. It was like something like 50,000 people before the Nakba. Then it was like 250,000. Yeah. So they've already been huddled into this concentration camp. And he was saying, you know, now that this new war against Gaza, or I guess we could call it a genocide, of course, that specifically the IDF was going to take over the north part of the strip, establish a new security perimeter, and then further push the Palestinians to the south and to the west. And that's exactly what's happened. It's really sad and enraging.
Exactly what's happened. And the truth is that hasn't happened by happenstance. That has been Israel's plan.
Yeah.
That has been their plan on paper, by phase, by operation. And now when you look, everything north of the Netzarim corridor is completely occupied and controlled by Israel. Everything along the Burma corridor on in the east, if you will, is all under Israel control. Everything to where the Burma corridor connects to the Marag corridor in the south. So the entirety of Gaza is now occupied by Israel, except this smaller Gaza, if you will. Basically, they occupied everything, and now there's a smaller Gaza that everybody is concentrated to, and that has always been their plan. When we were there with the GHF, and I asked the question why there was once 400 distribution sites, now there's only 3. All 3 that exist now are all located in the south.
Yeah.
This seems like it's forced displacement. And that's exactly what it was, to force all Palestinians from east to west and then from north to south. And that is exactly what they have done by day, by month, by week, by operation. And the end of that plan is the complete destruction, eradication, removal of Palestinians from Gaza. Even now, the fat, disgusting traitor to the United States that we gave back to Israel, John Pollard, he's running now for a seat in the Knesset under the rallying cry of it's now time to take all of Gaza.
Yep. You're right. It's been an institutional imperative for Israel to basically ethnically cleanse the entirety of the Gaza Strip. It feels like Gaza doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the people, there's still people there, but there's no society. And that's, like you said, by design, the Israelis have sought to deinstitutionalize this society, rob them of infrastructure, destroy all of their buildings. If you don't have buildings, you don't have a society. You don't have ways to organize. You don't have infrastructure.
Rob from their cultural identity.
Absolutely.
In the West Bank, the destruction of olive trees is not just a way to economically hamper Palestinians. It is a direct affront to their culture.
It's also a crime against humanity. It's considered a war crime.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all of those things. And we know that, you know, a war crime has never stopped Israel.
No, that's how they were created.
Yeah, precisely.
I want to talk. You know, I forgive me. I want to let my audience know. I told Anthony we'd do an hour. We've done over 2, so I don't want to keep them too long. And I know we're having a good discussion, but we might not get to all of your questions.
Yeah.
But I do want to spend some time talking about your candidacy for U.S. Congress. You're running a campaign with the Green Party. I have been livid, obviously over the Democrats and the Republicans, but livid specifically over the news reports, or at least there's not actually the lack of news reports about the treachery that the Green Party faces, specifically with the governorship of California, the race for the California governor. Yep. Butch Ware's running for governor there as a Green Party candidate, and he can't even get his name on the ballot because of all these spurious lawsuits that the Democrats wage against Green Party candidates. Any third party that is challenging Democrats from the left, they fight tooth and nail. And so I just wanted to ask, how is your campaign going? And we can talk about how best to support you, because what you're doing is really important, and you obviously are campaigning on all the correct platforms. Everything that you say, everything that you stand for, me and my audience completely agree. So how is it going? And I'm going to share the website too, where people can donate to your campaign.
So I'll say bottom line is that the midterm elections here on November 3rd will be a battle, a frontline battle in the future of our country. Obviously, going into the 2028 presidential election and next, congressional switchover. But here in 2026, we are either going to draw that line in the sand and stand up for ourselves as citizens, or we're going to let it slide by. This is a battle. This is a war, and that day is approaching very quick. Now, in California, what Butch Ware is dealing with is exactly what the Green Party dealt with in 2024 in elections here, where the Democratic Party and the Republican Party not tried, but did the exact same thing to the Green Party candidate, Matt Hoh. Matt Hoh, who is another military analyst, he's been on quite a few, very intelligent, very knowledgeable, great analyst, military veteran. He was running Green Party, and the Republicans and the Democrats did the exact same thing. So in North Carolina, the Green Party put great effort and great resource into filing a lawsuit against that action, to where now here in North Carolina, I will not face that risk. I am on the ballot. So
that's awesome.
So the lawsuit that the Green Party won in being a recognized party. So in essence, the Green Party is a third party in terms of against the traditional Republicans and Democrats, but not a third party in terms of registration or identity. The Green Party is a Federal Election Committee, FEC, recognized party. We filed as a Green Party. We filed before the deadline. The reason I wasn't in the primary election is because there's no one running against me as a Green Party candidate. So in the primary, if there's 3 Democrats, they have to run against each other to see who's going to emerge from the primary. So the Republican, the Democrat, the Libertarian, they all ran in the primary. So now going into the general election, there will be a Democrat, it's Behringer, the incumbent Republican, Brad Knott, myself, and the Libertarian candidate. So come November 3rd, when voters go to the voting booth and they open up their ballot for U.S. Congressional District 13, they will see their 4 names. I'm not a write-in. I'm not a petition. I'm not a signature vote. I am on the ballot. What happened or is happening to Butch in California at the gubernatorial level is exactly what North Carolina tried against the Greens last election cycle, which was...
And they failed.
which was fought. So what I'm saying to everybody in North Carolina District 13 is that the opportunity to make this change has never been greater, and the need has never been greater. We cannot continue with our Congress being led and dominated and controlled by Republicans and Democrats, or any candidate who takes money from large corporations, who takes money from AIPAC or their associated lobbyists, who puts a foreign government's interests before that of ours. We as a nation cannot survive continuing down that path. And this election cycle, November 3rd, 2026, when North Carolinians go to the ballot, especially here in District 13, because I don't know all who's run. I know District 2 has a Green Party candidate, Mike Durbin. But when you go to that ballot and vote, here in North Carolina, you have an opportunity to make history and make that change. Now, is voting one or two Greens or one or two non-traditional Republican or Democratic into the Congress, into the House of Representatives more specifically, is that going to be this great change watershed moment? No. However, in this midterm election, 2026, nationwide, and I'm focusing on the House of Representatives, nationwide, if we just get in the entire House of Representatives 5 third party or non-Republican, non-Democrat, 5 independent, libertarian, Green Party, whatever, 5 out of the entire nation into the House of Representatives, we break the Democrat-Republican deadlock. We become an alternate choice. We become that spoiler to when the Republicans and the Democrats want to merge sides to vote against the War Powers Act or to fund ICE. We then, just 5, hopefully it's more, but just 5, we then become the alternative, and our voice matters. And that's where it starts. A caucus of the independents. Imagine a caucus only has to be 5 of independent, third party, Green, just non-Republican, non-Democrat, a caucus of the independents. We can change the entire nature of the character of the U.S. House of Representatives. And that's where it starts. Our government in the legislative process starts in the House, moves to the Senate, onto the executive. So right now, in this midterm election in 2026, the United States has a chance to make history and be that change. And it can happen right here in North Carolina, because like I said, I'm on the ballot. You're not throwing away your vote. You go to vote for me at the election, you're not penciling me in. You're not hoping that there's enough that it goes forward. I'm on the ballot. Your vote counts. And we can make history. And, North Carolina, when you think of social movements, has made history before. I mean, Greensboro, North Carolina, which is just outside of my district, but Greensboro, North Carolina, is where the segregated lunch counter sit-ins started. Like that movement of civil disobedience and ending segregation started right here in North Carolina, not an hour and a half from where I live. North Carolina can make history again. And we can, if in the entire nation, again, every congressional district in the United States, if we just have 5, we can change the entire nature of the House of Representatives. And that is huge. Mm-hmm. And if we think that we can maintain what we have now with the way that the 119th Congress, this Congress, has voted and has performed, we can't. There's even current members of Congress, current sitting members of Congress that are calling for all of Congress to be fired. Like Chip Roy. Chip Roy is like, hey, if we can't do our job, you might as well fire us all. So, I mean, even they recognize it. Like, we cannot continue. And for someone to say, oh, well, it's always going to be a Democrat and it's always going to be Republican and it's always going to vote. Well, you know what? That is a defeatist attitude.
Absolutely.
but it's also not true.
Mm-hmm.
You're not throwing away your vote.
Ahistorical. Yes, exactly. And I am pissed off, and it pisses me off when I hear people like how you're telling us that want to say that, where's the Green Party? What's the Green Party doing? I don't see them. It's like the Green Party faces a national media blackout every time they run a candidate.
Oh yeah.
It's the reason that we don't hear about them is by design. It's not a good look to victim shame, to blame them, because we're fighting all an uphill battle. And I don't like when people try to trash the Green Party for that matter. And I wanted to ask you, are you facing any pushback on getting on the debate stage, or are we going to see you?
I deeply want to debate Brad Knott and Berenger on the debate stage, town hall style, formal debate style. I deeply want that. We're going to push for it hard up through calling them out on social media, to pushing it through their offices. We're really going to try, because we need to have that debate, because I need people in North Carolina District 13 to know why does the incumbent representative not live in our district? Why is he so keen on bringing massive data centers to District 13, but he doesn't live here? Why? Like, someone should he should answer that. Berenger or Brad Knott, you don't know anything about veterans benefits or what veterans need, because neither of you ever served. Neither of you served, and neither of you understand. I'm not saying that not serving is a disqualifying factor, but when you're representing a district like District 13, where so many of the district are either veterans or active duty or the dependents of veterans, understanding veterans benefits from pay to medical to the VA, and not just understanding it in terms of a platitudes of thank you for your service, but how it actually works and what a veteran needs, from prescription medications to appointments to compensation to all of those things. Neither of them provide that. I want to have those discussions, and I think that there's very little that if on the debate stage they can.
You're going to crush it
against me. I mean, in terms of military service, in terms of service to our nation, in terms of I live in the district. That should be a big plus, right? I actually live in the district. My children, my son, he doesn't go to a private school. He goes right here to public school in my county, in the district that I live in. My wife is a veteran. We've both lived here, and we both supported this community, and it's a family affair in terms of running for Congress. But I'm running for Congress not because I want a political career, not because I want the title, or because I want the opportunity to get rich off of the military industrial complex or lobbyists. I don't want people's money. I don't want anyone's money. I expect that, to go to Congress, serve the people, and not make a dime. I think that it is disgusting that we have members of our Congress in the House and in the Senate who bet on the poly market, on when we're going to start a war, who place trades in their stock portfolio hours before a war starts, and they made millions by coincidence. Look at Mark Wayne Mullen out of Oklahoma, who's now our Department of Homeland Security Secretary. In the last year, he's made over $10 million getting lucky in his last-minute stock market trades on military weapons. With someone like me, you're not going to get that, because I have no desire to be rich. I have no desire to be generationally wealthy. I am happy with my lot in life. I am happy with what I have. I am not seeking riches or glory or title. In fact, my hope is that I can serve in the Congress, break that ceiling, pave the way for other young, intelligent, motivated Americans that want to run and take that torch, because we've got to put new members into our Congress. I mean, I think the average age in the House of Representatives is like 103 years old. that's an exaggeration, but
I
there's
thought
some
that was
people
an
there.
underestimation.
There's people there that like that. It's like you should not even be voting for what you want off the Denny's menu, much less what war we're going to do.
Oh, we love you, Anthony. You're so on point, and we have your website here where you can see all of the issues that Anthony stands for, which perfectly comport with your own interests. It's aguilarforuscongress.com. We already got a donation from this chatter. Thank you, ZMCG, for the donation. I am a greenie all the way, and I hope that you are too. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I kept you a little long, but I've
been looking forward to catching back up with you. I know I was, I did that 222-mile walk, and
that's right. I saw posts of this.
I have no toenails anymore. Like I lost. It was rough. It was. I did it last year, and it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as hot. This year, the last few days of it, it got really hot. And when you're walking, for 10 hours a day across the highways, it gets really hot. So then afterwards, man, I was a hurt ranger. I was down for the count, man. I was on my couch eating my Cheetos and watching you go, and I was cheering you on. I was like I was there. Yes. But it was a great event, but man, took a couple days to kind of revive myself. And then I was I went to Chicago, spoke at a very nice event in Chicago. And then tomorrow I'm going to be in South Carolina at the South Carolina Green Party convention, where they're going to nominate their Green Party nominees for Congress, Senate, etc. So really honored to be joining my fellow Carolinians of the South in the Green Party tomorrow. So I'll be there in person, joining them for that great event. And but then we're just going to focus on the ground game here. And for anybody nationwide, you can donate. Anybody nationwide can push the narrative, push the information, continue getting it out there, fighting the traditional media shadow banning, fighting it. And if you're in North Carolina, I could use all the help I can get. If you're in District 13, vote. It's the most powerful thing we can do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to sign off here. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you had a good time and found the discussion of value. As always, Anthony Aguilar, such a pleasure. And we'll be following the campaign very closely. We hope to have you back on.
You've mastered Clauswitz, so I think you are now an honorary West Point graduate. I mean, you definitely have the Civil War era mustache. So, we'll call you Rathbone Beauregard III.
Lovely.
You're on it, man. You're great observations. It's a great conversation. Thank you.
He's a West Point grad, folks. All right. That means I'm basically a West Point grad as well.
We're pretty much peers.
I'm going to be on the Joint Chiefs of Staff in no time. All right.
I would love to see that. Exactly as you are. Next brief at the Pentagon. Pete Hegseth comes out, and then you.
Oh my goodness, that would be a sight. Well, thank you once again.
Thank you.
All right,
thank you to everybody out there in the Rathbone universe. You're all great, and I always love sharing an evening, having a conversation with you and your great audience.
We'll do it again real soon sometime. Okay, bro.
Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.